Tide.
This call will
Tide.
be recorded.
Here are the next 4 tides at select locations in the listening area. Tides for Barton's Inlet Tide. 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 Tides for the Harkers Island Bridge. Tide. 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 Tides for Beaufort Inlet Tide. 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 Tides for the Newport River. Tide. 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 Tides for Bogue Inlet Tide. 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 Area water temperatures, Beaufort, 59. Bogue. Here are the next 4 tides at select locations in the listening area. Tides for Duck Pier. Tide. 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 Tides for Oregon Inlet Tide. 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 Tides for the Pamlico Sound near Rodanthe. Tide. 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 Tides for Hatteras Inlet Tide. 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 Tides for Ocracoke Inlet Tide. 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 Area water temperatures, Duck Pier, 52. Jeanette's Pier, 51. Oregon Inlet Marina, 56. Avon Pier, 61.
For the Crystal Coast tides and water temperature, press 1. That is not